residency in regard for the meal, but in regard to the Mahmood Martin Foundation, who are supporting this residency and who have devised a residency with Rimbun. Sorry, I'm getting tongue twisted. Can you say it nicely?
Rimbun Dahan.
Rimbun Dahan. So it's a new partnership between the mill and Mahmood Martin Foundation. However, the residency has existed for, would you say, four years in total, or how many years, or has it only happened once or twice?
This is the first residency for us now, because we had to stop because of COVID. We couldn't do anything.
Okay, so we're actually.
It happened soon after the launch, and we couldn't do.
So that it was about 4 years ago that we met and talked about. Okay, so this is the first time it's actually in a full form as a residency between our two organisations. So we're here to hear it from Rob himself. He has experienced the residency over in Malaysia, and it's an informative chat so that people that are interested in applying for the residency can actually get, ask questions, get to know more about the experience through Rob, and also through Jeff and Soraya, who are here from Mahmood Martin Foundation. We can ask them some questions. So I'm just going to ask a few questions of you, and in that process we'll learn about how the residency is structured. So Rob, when did you go to Rimbun Dahan?
I was there between 2011 and 2012. So I think I was there from about March, April to February.
Wow.
So it's a year-long residency, as it was supplied by the Custodian, the hosts for the place at that time.
Yeah.
And we understand that the Delima Residency is a 3-month one, plus the 3 months added on with whatever happens after the fact of being here, or being over there rather, happens here. So it's a nice kind of ability to kind of immerse oneself in a place like that, to do some work, and then actually follow it through in the place where you're kind of currently living, I suppose. So yeah, I'll just talk about it in general.
Yeah. I can ask you questions, or you can chat.
You can. It'll be both. Yeah.
Okay.
So just thank you to Sarah and Jeff for supplying this incredible opportunity. And it really is kind of an exceptional and wonderful thing, so many thanks to them. A residency, for anyone who's not done it, it's a great opportunity to live in a way I think that artists are meant to live, in the sense that it feels very luxurious in terms of time and support and everything that one needs. And so from that point of view, it's like a bit of heaven on earth. It's really fantastic. So the opportunity to immerse yourself in one's work is kind of really important, and it's facilitated by everything that is provided. And it's such a rare opportunity. Most of the time artists have to do other things, and they fit their artists in amongst it. It's how it kind of generally happens. And there are a lot of strains and concessions that one has to make when one is working that way. So this opportunity to act as artist in residence is just a really wonderful, immersive opportunity, both within the culture that the person would be going into, but also within one's own work as well. So it's a cherished time. I've done artist in residencies, and I've generally never wanted to leave. So that's the kind of feeling of it. You don't really want it to end, but it does.
And you were there 12 months?
12 months, yeah.
So the difference is this residency will be 3 months. He's mentioned that earlier, but just reiterating that. So it will be a fast experience if we're comparing it to the year.
Yeah.
So I guess it's really beneficial to know how to get the most out of it for 3 months through your eyes, and how you would recommend to go prepared for, how to get the most out of this.
Yeah.
Just a question to lead in, I just want to get through these, and they'll hopefully allow you to talk through everything. When you arrive in Malaysia and you get off the plane, what was your experience, and what would you suggest for people to expect when they arrive to a new country that they perhaps haven't been to?
you're just going to have to face the fact that it's overwhelming. So you kind of go into it with that expectation, and it generally is. If you haven't had any experience of living in the tropics, then living in Adelaide gives you no precedence for what you're going to enter into. So the thing that particularly struck me immediately was the weather. So the heat and humidity is kind of something which is relentless. And it colours the landscape particularly, in fact all of the environment in an interesting way from a visual artist point of view anyway. So there are those things which are kind of all-consuming, that kind of immersive kind of idea that is something that you know is very different to where you come from. And it takes some acclimatising too. And also just getting used to the fact that for the most part, you won't meet so many people who speak English. So you have to be prepared to kind of read the signs. I recommend that you do some basic linguistic kind of familiarity prior to going there, even if it's just for simple things like how to read signs and things like that. But also, for the most part, people are very helpful. There is that kind of experience of kind of complete alienation, and at the same time, absolute fascination with what's going on there. And I think it's that kind of tension that doesn't go away. It's kind of there all the time. So you're aware that you are kind of separate from this, you're a visitor, but also the place generates an intense curiosity because of its differences and similarities, yeah. So those sorts of things are kind of fairly immediate. Just the, nuts and bolts of getting through the airport is pretty straightforward. It is a bit of a kind of a meander, but you find your way through. And then from that point on, it's easy to get to the taxi stand. I assume that's how people will probably get from the airport to Rimbun. Yeah, and it's quite a long trip.
journey.
It's a long trip. Yeah.
How long do you think? Remember that it is?
Yeah, it seemed to me to take an hour at least. I think it's about 80 k's. I think here from there. So it's not like we're in Adelaide.
Yeah.
It's in the middle of the city, so it's a long trip. But also, it's a nice kind of way to kind of sit back in a car and just kind of watch the world go past, and you start to get a sense of kind of where you're at. Yeah. The way that we used to go from the airport to Rimbun was via one of the highways that took you on the outskirts of the city. And in going along that route, you see some of the iconic architecture of Hijaz Kasturi, and so you can see kind of immense things either quite close or on the distant horizon, and they were iconic buildings that he made. So you kind of start to get a sense that you are in this strange place. It's all very distant, and yet you're going to spend time at a place with people who built some of those enormous, incredible buildings. So yeah, it's just fascinating, really exciting stuff. Yeah.
So the people that run this beautiful place at Rimbun Dahan, are they very interactive with you as part of the residency? How does that work? How does that relationship between you and the people that run it work?
Yeah, pretty informal. So there is not a lot of interaction, and it depends on what's going on. So you'll be invited over for dinners if they're happening, or if there are interesting guests coming through, they might kind of find you out and kind of assist you to meet them. So that sort of thing happens. But generally speaking, they're both really busy people, and it is something that I kind of experienced in Malaysia, that it's like everybody's in kind of overdrive. It's a very energetic place. And that takes some getting used to. And so he just is busy doing things. Angela, who is his wife, is busy doing things. So I was probably there a week, I guess, before I actually met them, which was quite strange to me, because you kind of go into the place and thinking, oh, these are the hosts, so they'll be kind of on the door waiting for you to kind of come in. But it's not like that. Okay. So you're expected to be pretty self-reliant when you get there. The manager usually is, or was on hand when I was there, to kind of introduce me to where I would be, and of course that will actually happen. So where you're going to stay, there'll be some kind of interaction about what will go on in the first day or two, and so on. And so that aspect of things, that is a kind of a beginning, I suppose, of a sense that you want to go over there quite resilient, independent, able to get on with the work, you know, that's the reason that you're there, and to kind of just get involved, but get involved in the work. And the social stuff happens as a periphery to that,
Okay. So that sort of sense of being ready to get the most out of it, being willing to seek people and have those cultural interactions. How many people do you think are in the whole sort of, what shall I call it, a precinct or
an estate.
Estate?
Yeah, I suppose, yeah.
How many people do you think you kind of are there staying at once?
I think it changes all the time.
Okay.
So there is a core kind of staff, internet-managers are there. The Vilkas, I assume, will be there most of the time, I would think. Yeah, she's the manager. And so they're there constantly, but there will be a changing landscape probably of artists and of various kinds doing all sorts of things. So they have writers and dancers and performance artists as well as visual artists and so on. And it's just whoever happens to be kind of passing through at the time that you will interact with. For the most part, with the artists that came through, they generally did like to get together. So they're also kind of there coming from various places, aware that it was alien to all of them, and so their opportunity to interact and also share kind of artistic histories and ideas and so on was something that they were interested in doing. I think, from the point of view of everybody that I met, that was the case. Yeah.
And were they internationals or were they all locals? Or?
No, so the residency that I did, the year-long one, there was a partner Malaysian artist there as well named Haslan Ismail, and so he was there on a fairly constant basis, although he had a new baby, and so that took him away from time to time. But there was a dance choreographer came from Germany. We had some Australian people come through, some who were sponsored by the Australia Council at the time, I think, and people from other parts of Southeast Asia, I can't remember, but it was a pretty mixed group, but yes, quite international as well, yeah.
Okay. So in regard to getting involved in Malaysian culture, how far away is the nearest village or connection? Is it inside that village there? Is that a village itself or a town or a city or?
Yep. Yeah. All right, so Rimbun Dahan is on the edge of the outermost part of the city, Kuala Lumpur.
Okay.
So in saying that, you're also within a kampung or a village, but it's quite big and it's kind of a little bit borderless. Really much further out than that, you're in the jungle, and so the estate is in this, what you would consider to be a village, but in looking around, it's not village-like. So Rimbun Dahan is like a little oasis. It's a little kind of bit of paradise. So you come in from a very busy road where all sorts of little industries are going on. People start them and they fail and they start them again all over the place along this very busy road. It's a really active kind of work area. And Rimbun Dahan is on the main road running through, and you come in off that road and enter through the gates close, and then it's like this oasis of peace and quiet. So it's very much like going into a botanic garden kind of setting. And so the whole kind of interior environment of the estate is set up by Angela as an indigenous garden. And so that's very interesting for anybody who's interested in botany from that part of the world. So it's like you're in two worlds almost, you know, what goes on inside those kind of walls and those gates, and it's quite extensive, is very different to the hectic life that you get as soon as you go out the drive. It's quite fascinating.
So you need to go out the drive to get your food.
Oh, yeah.
And so did you find that you would go out and connect out in culture and make new friends, and can you bring them in? Like, how does that work? Is it?
I guess you could, but also I should point out that I had no Malaysian language when I went over there, so I was only an English speaker. And so that was something that I was surprised about. I thought there would be more people speaking English, but there were very few. And there are plenty in the city area, so when you go to the CBD, there are lots of English-speaking people. And so, the whole thing of getting anything done, getting food, that kind of basic thing, it's like quite a trial by fire if you don't have the language. But it's also quite good fun. And it's amazing that even without words, you can actually get a very good meal served to you by people who can recognise that you're a stranger, you're pretty hopeless. So you get all sorts of people helping you out.
Nice.
Piling food on your plate if you don't know what to ask for or whatever. And so it just kind of starts from there and you just kind of get through it. But it's a real adventure. Yeah, it's good.
So you could choose to be in that more sort of safe, isolated oasis, or you can do either, and it's up to you as to what energy you've got to. Yeah, but you do need to go out to get your shopping and.
You've got to shop. You've got to do that sort of stuff. Yeah, so you do need to do that. And within all the buildings that are there for artists, there will be food preparation facilities, so the kitchens and all the rest of it. So once you kind of get food, then you can kind of bring it in and deal with it that way. And it's quite good then from that point of view, you can figure out how much exposure do you want, or would you want to be a bit inclusive, you know, and so you can kind of mix it your own way. But food too is very expensive, very inexpensive to eat out. So you can get really good, really healthy food for equivalent of $3 for a total meal, you know. So it's really inviting from that point of view.
Would that be the same now? Because that was a few.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I looked at it on the net today, and the information that was coming from Rimbun said the same thing. Yeah, about $3, give or take, for a meal.
Okay. And a few more cultural questions just before we get into how it affected your practice and your art itself. Are there any cultural norms that people need to know in the sense of the way you dress, or what's not acceptable, or things that people should know before they take on something like this or go somewhere like this?
Yeah. Look, I would just generally say, male or female, I would just be modest. Modest in your dress, modest in your behaviour. You're kind of a visitor, you're like a guest in a place. And so you might just reflect if you've got a big personality. You might just remember that you're being looked at. People are interested in you, but you know, for the most part, you'll find many people who maybe never met a Western person before. And so you're also a cultural ambassador, and so you would be kind of on best behaviour. Yes, that's what I would say. Without, you know, I had some stories about things which I don't need to really go into, about people who are a little naive, I guess, about where they were and the kind of activities that they were undertaking and so on, and it caused some problems. So I would just say be mindful about that. Just be respectful, polite, in every way you can. Be modest, and you're there as a guest to experience this new place. So don't let your stamp be too big. There's no need for it.
Yeah, definitely. I'm nearly through the questions. The facilities themselves, so where you actually stayed, can you talk about the actual accommodation and studio, and are they the same thing? Or, I know we've got information on the website, but hearing it from you yourself, exactly how that is, because I think that really helps an artist go, do I want to practice in my lounge, in my living space, where will I be, you know, that kind of thing.
It depends, from what I can gather, on the availability of the buildings and the appropriateness of them for whatever your art practice might be. I think it'll be something to do with that. And so there are various kinds. There are historical houses that have been taken apart, brought from their origin and built or rebuilt back in the compound, in the estate. And they're beautiful, really lovely traditional Malaysian houses. So there are those. There are some workers' cottages which I saw have recently been renovated. And then the place that I was in was a studio apartment. And he just was saying that when they were designing the kinds of places that they would need for artists, they didn't really, or artists in residence, they didn't quite know kind of where to go with it. So the place that I stayed in was designed basically on a Chinese shopfront approach, where living is upstairs and the workplace is downstairs. So that's how my studio living space is organised. And so it's all very open plan at the top, kind of big, modernist, chunky architecture as well. Lots of triangles and things in this kind of forest, essentially, you know. So a really interesting juxtaposition of things going on. And yeah, it was great. So an open plan living area above with kind of views, lovely balcony looking from upstairs, looking over the gardens and all the rest of it. Minimal kind of survival stuff that's there, small kitchen and that sort of thing, but it's really everything that one needs. And so I can only talk really about that from a working point of view, and then I worked underneath. And I think the space that I had is about 35 square metres, so easily big enough for things that anybody would want to do.
Yeah.
And they had a wall of windows which again looked out onto the garden, so everything's kind of full of light and the environment is kind of right there, kind of looking at you. Yeah. Yeah. So that was my workspace. Yeah.
And so how did that, so to the real core of this
Yeah.
now, how did that experience, that cultural experience, the place, affect you as an artist and your practice? And then I guess, I mean, I can ask you this later, but then the outcomes of that and what you brought back to Australia. So I guess that was a big, long question.
Let me see. So I went in, and probably from the point of view of someone going there, I didn't quite know what I was going to be doing, but I knew that they had an interest in me being there because I had an interest in human anatomy. So it's been part of my research area, which I just kind of enjoy doing. So dealing with drawing and sculpture of human anatomy. So they knew that that was an aspect of what I was interested in, also interested in kind of aspects of nature. And also Haslan, the Malaysian artist, was also very interested in anatomy. So they thought putting us together would be an interesting kind of look at kind of how people from different cultures actually approach the same topic, this kind of commonality of who we are as creatures. And so what I did was took over some drawings. I took over 12 drawings, life drawings that I'd made. I didn't quite know what I was going to do. And so I thought I'll just take them there and kind of see what happens. So that was the basis for me getting started, was some drawings. In taking them over there though, one of the things that I became aware of and sensitive to was that there is a kind of an issue around the depiction of the naked human form in Malaysia. That was my understanding of it, and that was what I was hearing from some artists. And so that put me in a bit of a dilemma, because I had all of these drawings of the nude and so on, and I thought, well, I can't really blow these up into big paintings or whatever. And so I just kind of let that be for a while. And the other body of work that I'd been doing prior to going over there was a series of cloudscapes. So I like clouds, I paint them, photograph them, draw them all the time and so on. So one of the things that impressed me when I got there was, again, to do with this weather thing, is that if you like clouds, then Malaysia is a great place to go for them. You know, the kind of the weather, the climate, the thunderstorms that kind of keep rolling in relentless. Just kind of looking up, and that's where I was looking mainly rather than looking down. That became the kind of stimulus for me to actually get some work going in a way that was dependent on the environment, but also gave me a bit of time just to kind of put my idea about the figure in the background for a bit. And it's quite useful to do that. You just kind of set it aside. It's still ticking away there somewhere, but you get on and do something else. So I began working on a series of cloud paintings. And they were very different in colour and tonality to those that I've been doing in South Australia, because the light and climate is kind of so different. And they reflected that, and they took me into a really interesting area for me anyway, in terms of tonality, close tonality and close colours, because of this kind of humidity that's everywhere. It brings all the colours together. So you don't get kind of stark differences of visual kind of tone and colour that you get here with sharp edges and that kind of thing. Everything has got this, for me anyway, through my eyes, it had this humid kind of veil over everything. It was really beautiful, but it sets up really interesting formal problems in terms of how you make paintings, in terms of how you organise tonality and so on. So that was enough to kind of get all of that going. And then the clouds began, it's like that thing, there's a term for it, I forget what it is, but we can see in things like clouds, anything that's amorphous, we can interpret it in certain ways, we'll see things in it, in other words. So some of the paintings I was doing started to look like things, and so I pursued that, and they started to look a bit like figures. And so eventually my way of reconciling my own sensitivity to the cultural norms that I was going into around depictions of the naked figure, and what I was going to do with this group of life drawings was to make paintings which were hybrids of clouds and figures. And so I could put someone in the experience of looking at a painting, and it might be a figure, might be a naked figure, or it might be a cloud, depending on how you looked at it. So that let me off the hook. If you saw a naked figure, it wasn't up to me. You know, either way. So that was how I got around that dilemma.
Yeah.
So
The dilemma at Delima.
Yeah, there's the dilemma at Delima. That's right. Yeah, so that's how I kind of organised that aspect of it. And then beyond that, continued with more cloud paintings and larger pictures and so on. And so the whole anatomy aspect for me wasn't dealt with in anywhere near as a specific manner as Hussein was doing. So his work was quite kind of strictly organised around that, as well as having a fantasy kind of theme, which he was interested in. And mine just kind of took off on their own kind of area. And Hussein's work was kind of quite dark in a lot of ways. It's quite inspired by graphic art and those sorts of things. And someone said when they were walking to the exhibition that we had together at the end of the residency that it looked like one was a vision of hell and the other was kind of heaven. And so we had this kind of interesting polarity going on. He was interested in all of this kind of somewhat kind of dark, mysterious kind of stuff in the kind of images he was making, and mine were kind of fluffy, kind of coloured things. Yeah, so it was interesting from that point of view. Yeah.
That is amazing.
Yeah. I should also say though that in relation to that depiction of the nude figure, I also met a lot of contemporary younger artists, and they just kind of said, well, we know that that's out there as an idea or a norm, but we just don't care. We're just going to do whatever we want.
Okay.
So there are these other streams, you know, and so from that point of view, I can't say that it's either one thing or the other, and I'm no authority on it. I can just talk about my own experience.
Yeah.
But I certainly had, you know, spoke to young artists and saw their work, and it didn't matter what they wanted to do, they just depicted and it was there. And it was kind of up to other people to kind of deal with it. Yeah.
And that work that you did create there, did you have any sort of outcome with that back in Australia after the process, after that experience?
I did. When I got back, mainly I think because the weather was so kind of different again, I actually didn't do anything for a couple of months. And I had friends say, well, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm not doing anything, I'm actually just waiting. So what are you waiting for? I said, I don't know. But, you know, that's kind of how creative work goes sometimes. And so I actually kind of couldn't make a kind of direct continuum between what I've been doing there and what I was continuing on with. I still paint clouds and that's still ongoing, so there's no question about that. But in terms of the immediate stuff, I felt like I just had a need to kind of empty my head of a whole lot of ideas, which I just kind of plucked out of the air, whatever came to mind, and form the basis of a painting. And so I think that kind of imaginative openness was probably a reflection of hanging around with Hussein, whose work was just kind of the most imaginative kind of stuff you could think of. You put anything to kind of together. And I think in a way maybe my coloristic kind of sweetness in a way kind of affected his work from what I was told anyway. And maybe some of his interest in generating ideas affected my work when I got back. But that kind of opportunity to really immerse yourself in your work there, it does kind of consolidate you in your own beliefs about your work. It's kind of a bit intangible. It's not always a very direct, you know, this painting leads to that one. But it can be more about a kind of a belief in what you are and what you're meant to be doing. And so it does give you strength to actually make that the core aspect of your life in as much as one can. And that was certainly the case. At the time I was head of drawing and printmaking at Adelaide Central School of Art, and when I got back, in fact just before I got back, I resigned from that position and continued lecturing there and teaching there, but I didn't really want anything else to take me so far away from that immersion that I'd had when I was in Malaysia. So it had impacts from that point.
So it
of
was
view.
life-changing.
It is, it really is, yeah.
Great.
Yeah, and I think it will be for anybody who goes over. It's a big thing, it really is. And it doesn't matter if it's for 3 months, it will still be something which will affect you for the rest of your life. You never forget it. Yeah. I had a nasi lemak about 10 years after being there, and I hadn't had one since. And when I tasted it, I teared up straight away. I thought, wow, it's really big.
Yeah. It feels like time, that's a beautiful amount of information, but it feels like time for you all, if you have any specific questions, or of Jeff and Soraya, who have also been there, but and of the mill for the structure. So does anyone have any direct other questions?
So I'm curious about basically how you end up doing it. What sort of artists they look for. You've mentioned that there was a dancer or a choreographer who was there, so it seems to be quite broad, yeah?
Broad at the time that I was there. So I was there under a different auspice or a different kind of set of guidelines. And so Jeff and Soraya would be the people to answer a question like that. I really don't know. Yeah.
Well, for this particular residency here with the mill, we're limited to visual arts because of providing studio space afterwards, after the residency. So that's where the limitation is currently, and we'll see how things go with time. The dance, the filmmaking, the natural history, ecology stuff is all ongoing and has been ongoing there for over 20, 30 years. So that's nothing, that just goes on regardless. And that's via various auspices to go there. 1 or 2 they provide themselves, but less so now than what they used to.
So I guess it's more about painting, drawing, sculpture, that sort of
I
thing.
think, like, from my visual arts curator perspective, it's more limited to a person who has a studio practice with an exhibition outcome in mind. So that can be whatever it is, as long as the person who goes to Rimbun Dahan can practice in a studio there and can come back here and practice in a studio here and deliver an exhibition outcome. But my idea of what art is broad. So, and yeah, I'm sure that.
So just to articulate, the panel that will select the artists from the applicants will be comprised of Mill and Mahmood Martin Foundation people, and
Not us.
and it's, yeah, I mean, it's really, from my perspective, when it comes to applications, and I've read many of them, it's about your desire, the purpose for you as an artist as to why this will be meaningful. And I guess we are encouraging people to show an interest in cultural exchange, so that they're going to gain something from the cultural experience there, and maybe make some connections and links when they get back to Australia to Malaysian culture in some way, or bringing that cultural experience back to the mill, so that there's a cultural exchange desire in their reasoning for going. I think that that's quite important to our partnership and what we're trying to foster. But when it comes to the actual work itself, that's all about you and your practice and why you want to do this. So it's not about, you know, anyone having, oh, that we want that fancy looking artist because they do paintings of trees. There's no decision making in that way.
I think Adele's point is a good one, that this is not, in answer to Joanna's original question, this is not necessarily about visual art. It's about something that can make use of this residency, and as it's currently established, that includes a 3-month residency here, in a studio here. So whatever it is, has to be able to make use of that opportunity. We don't care whether it's a visual artist, a dancer, or a macrame maker. We don't mind.
Yeah.
It's about being able to use what's on offer in an effective way.
And recognising as well that built into this program is support from me and from the mill team, and Kat has expertise in the dance world as well. So, you know, we are a multidisciplinary arts organisation.
I think it's a really nice idea to put together the 3 months away and the 3 months here to give that continuity of practice. So, as opposed to when I was there, once you leave there, then you're cut off from that in a way. You do whatever you're going to do, but to actually link them together in that 6 month period is a really great idea.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons that we did that as well is because what you make in Malaysia isn't always easy to bring back here. So it might be that an artist needs to work on concepts and, you know, sketches and gathering things to then bring them back here and make them, or, you know, there's lots of ways that you can do that, but knowing that you can't make a 30 kilo sculpture and create it and bring it back to Adelaide. You could, but it
Might cost a bit
cost
more.
money.
Yeah, and the 3 month is purely because they are so in demand. They can't give us 6 months at the moment, Rob. Bill Kiss is just, you know, we had 200 applicants last year. So the 3 months is what they are giving us. You know, if we'll see what happens. It's all very fluid. If we find that that's not enough, we can always negotiate for more. But yeah, that's why the 3 months for this time.
It's a teaser, really, isn't it? Get in there, get used to the humidity. All right, you're back in Adelaide.
And the mozzies, we've got to talk about the mozzies,
The
don't we?
mozzies.
There are mozzies there.
There are insects all over. Or you're living in the jungle, so sort of, you know, very modern, you know, surrounds within. But, you know, it is on the edge of a jungle. So
Have you guys had a chance to have a look at the application form? Did you have any application-y questions? Or?
You had another question that was coming out of your mouth, didn't you?
Just a little follow-up to double check. So the exhibition would end up being here then? Okay.
Yep. Yep. And we are going through an expansion here at the moment. As a lot of you know, we're expanding upstairs, but we're opening up into that space there, so that mill showcase will have possibility for one more wall in the other space, but
And
a greater expansion there, which is exciting. You'll see soon.
and now that Bilkis has taken over from Angela, she is more involved with. She's a dancer herself. She's a dancer performer. But she I think has ramped up the social aspect of it as well. I mean, I'm not sure whether you went to all the openings elsewhere that were there, Rob, when you were there.
Yeah. Not as many as I could get to, but
Yeah.
there were lots of opportunities for that too, which is something to point out actually. You do get lots of chances of getting to see, you know, contemporary art that's going on there.
So, did you actually exhibit any of your work or have opportunities to share when you were there?
Yeah, as part of the residency, at the end of the year, the two artists, the Malaysian artist and the Australian artist, have a shared exhibition. And on the estate, they have the most amazing underground, I think, octagonal gallery. And so, yes, Hustlin and I filled that. So that was the end of the year's celebration. But yeah, and it was a big event. You know, they always are, evidently, or they were at the time. You know, when they had those
Invitation only.
Yeah,
And lots of buyers and people.
Yeah.
Wow.
But they ran out of space, I think, as well. So I'm not sure whether that program is running anymore. I think you were the last one.
I think there may be one or two more afterwards, but yes, the year-long program they closed down. Yes, yeah. So it's 3 months now, I think. Might be 6 months as well.
6
but
months
anyway,
max,
the
I
year-long
think,
is not
yeah.
happening. Yeah.
We might well decide after the first year or so that 6 months, 6 plus 6 would be better.
Yeah.
And we'd be very open to looking at that. But we need to, I think, try what they can easily give us 3 months, fine. We'll do 3 plus 3, see how that goes. But if our experience rapidly becomes that everybody says, oh, we should bring longer, then we can look at that. I mean, it doesn't make a major change from our point of view. It just means half the number of residencies for double the time.
And less outcomes here.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. But we just had a Ugandan artist with come here for 6 weeks with Sanaa Festival, supporting that, and it was the outcomes was expected an exhibition from that in the Sanaa Festival. That was a fast residency. Like she'd come all the way from Uganda. It was 6 weeks, and she was trying to produce work in sort of week 3-4, ready for the exhibition. So it was intense. So 3 months sounds long compared to what we just watched her, Charlene, go through. But it'll be short and it will be long. It'll be both. I think it'll feel. I mean, just travelling in Thailand for me for 2 months and seeing the whole of Thailand feels like a year to me in my memory. Because I think the cultural experience will feel long. Tara, have you got any questions? Because we don't know how you're thinking of this through the Adelaide Film
interesting as well, and so just I guess within these walls, we're actually focusing on a bit of an Indonesian film focus stream with the festival this year, and kind of just wanted to understand a little bit more about how you were collaborating as well. And it's so interesting. I wish I was going. You totally sold it to me.
You can apply.
Well, it's during October though, isn't it? So my boss might film me. But
What is next year?
next year.
Yeah, I'm more interested in it for next year. So.
Oh, there you go.
I think you're putting out the curators script.
Curating can be part of it.
Yeah. I think I'm excluded because I'm part of the panel deciding.
I have to step back.
Yeah.
Any other things that might want to be asked before we wrap up? Well, thank you so much for coming and sharing that. That's very special. I felt like you took us there. It was lovely.
Thanks for asking.
And thank you both for Jeff and Sarai for bringing us together with this partnership to create this residency. And sorry, I thought that you went with Mahmood Martin. I was a bit confused there, so sorry. I was on the wrong page. But this is so exciting.
We facilitated it. We didn't support it.
Okay, you did actually
Made a
facilitate.
connection.
Got it.
Yeah.
So it's exciting. We're looking forward to, supporting the artist that goes and going on the journey with them.